Imagine a civilization that ruled millions across the world's most vertical lands. They built a unified society
without using a single currency
or steel tools. And most incredibly, no real. Welcome to the Kapaknyan, the Great Inca Road. Across 4 modern countries, 25,000 miles of engineered impossibility. This is the world before today. We start now. When we think of ancient highways, we usually picture the Romans, straight, flat lines cutting across Europe, built for the wheel. But the Inca faced a fundamentally different reality. In the Andes, the wheel wasn't just useless, it was a death trap. You can't roll a cart up a 60-degree incline. So the Inca didn't build roads for vehicles. And for the ultimate all-terrain vehicle of the ancient world, the llama. A single llama can carry up to 60 pounds of cargo, requiring no flat pavement, just sure footing. But to get humans and animals across this terrain, the Inca had to become masters of environmental manipulation. They possessed no iron or steel, no drafting paper, no complex mathematics as we know them today. Yet, using only harder stones like hematite, they shaped granite blocks that fit together so precisely, not even a modern razor blade can slide between them. Without these perfect retaining walls, the torrential Andean rain would have washed the entire 25,000-mile network off the cliffs in a single season. But stone can only take you so far. What happens when the road meets a 200-foot gorge? You can't build a stone arch across that. So, the Inca engineered something revolutionary. Suspension bridges. Centuries before Europe would figure out the up, the Inca were weaving bridges entirely out of grass that could hold the weight of an entire army. They were terrifying. They swayed in the wind, but they worked flawlessly. Because grass rots, these bridges were rebuilt from scratch by local villagers every single year. The engineering was perfect, but a road is useless without a system to run. From the freezing peaks to the scorching Atacama Desert, it was time to deploy the most advanced postal service the ancient world had ever seen. When that conch shell echoed through the Andean canyons, it meant one thing: information was inbound. Meet the Chasqui, the ultramarathon runners who served as the lifeblood of the Inca Empire. They were stationed at precise intervals along the 25,000 miles of road. A single runner didn't travel the whole way. It was a massive high-speed relay race. Using this system, a message could travel 150 miles in a single day. That is significantly faster than the famed Roman postal service, which relied on horses. But here is the most fascinating part. The Inca had no written language, no letters, no alphabet. Instead, they used the quipu, a complex system of knotted colored codes. The position, color, and type of knot encoded massive amounts of data: census numbers, tax records, troop movement. And they didn't just carry data, they carried luxury. The emperor, sitting in his capital of Cusco, 11,000 feet above sea level and 300 miles, could eat fish that had been swimming in the Pacific Ocean just 2 days prior. A 300-mile relay race ascending 2 miles into the sky just to deliver fresh sushi. But human endurance requires fuel and shelter. And the Inca left nothing to chance. Every 15 to 20 miles, exactly 1 day's walk, was a tampu, a state-run way station. Think of it as the world's first franchise of ancient motels. Anyone traveling on official state business had the right to stop here. They were guaranteed a dry bed, safety from pumas and the freezing night air, and a hot meal. In the lethal environment of the Andes, a missed tampu meant death by exposure. But the true logistical miracle wasn't just the shelter. It was what they kept on the hillside above. The Colicas, massive state-run storehouses. They were designed with flow-through ventilation, utilizing the freezing high-altitude air. The Inca had invented the largest system of refrigeration and food storage the world had ever seen. At the empire's height, these cellars contained enough food to feed the entire population of the empire for 3 to 7 years without a single harvest. Because of these storehouses, an Incan army of 100,000 men could march Nabatu without ever needing to forage, pillage, or carry their own supply lines. And the secret weapon fueling this entire machine? A technique that allowed food to last for up to 20 years. The foods of the Incan road. Long before modern science, the Inca discovered freeze-drying. But to understand how they survived the journey, you have to taste it. Let's sit down at a tampu in the year 1450. Here is exactly what the ancient world tasted like. To be continued in part 4. If you stepped into a tampu after running 10 miles at high altitude, your survival depended on what was in this clay pot. But those aren't stones. That is Chuño, the ancient freeze-dried potato. High in the Andes, the nights are freezing, but the daytime sun is blistering. The Inca weaponized this climate. They let the potatoes freeze at night, then stomped on them at dawn to squeeze out the water. Left to bake in the fierce sun, they became completely devoid of moisture. Tossed into boiling water, they instantly rehydrated, providing massive caloric energy. But carbohydrates aren't enough for the brutal Andean roads. You need protein that won't rot. The Inca relied on salted, sun-dried llama and alpaca meat. In the Quechua language, they called this dried meat, charqui. When the Spanish arrived, they couldn't pronounce it properly. Today, you know it as jerky. Next into the pot went the mother grain, a seed so nutritious, modern astronauts take it to space. Quinoa. It grew where mains could not survive, thriving on the terrifyingly steep, engineered agricultural terraces of the high mountains. To flavor it, they used huacatai, a native Andean herb that smells like a mix of mint, basil, and citrus. This thick, savory, incredibly hearty stew was the premium gasoline of the Incan road network. For special occasions or high-ranking officials traveling the road, there was cuy. Yes, guinea pig. While we keep them as pets today, to the Inca, they were the perfect low-maintenance livestock. They took up no space and reproduced constantly. But a traveler cannot survive on food alone. Hydration in the dry Andes was a matter of life and death. Water wasn't always safe. So they drank chicha, a mildly alcoholic beer made from fermented corn. Traditionally, the fermentation was kick-started by the natural enzymes in human saliva. It was thick, slightly sour, highly caloric, and safer to drink than the river water. Drinking chicha wasn't just about thirst. It was a ritual of hospitality, binding the empire together. Inside these way stations, the strict class divides of the empire occasionally blurred. A general from the capital might share the fire with a humble messenger. Fed, hydrated, and warm beneath heavy alpaca wool, they slept soundly while the lethal Andean winter raged just inches away through the stone walls. But the empire never rested for long. At dawn, the Quipu was secured. The road called. He had 10 miles of vertical terrain to conquer before the next handoff. This system of roads, runners, and storage was a masterpiece of human logistics. It rivaled and in some ways surpassed the greatest road builders of the old world. But there is a massive difference between the Romans and the Inca. A difference in philosophy, in geography, and in how an empire flexes its power. The Inca didn't conquer the mountains. They compromised with them. They integrated their empire directly into the bedrock of the earth. But this perfect annihilation was about to shatter. In 1532, a group of 168 men stepped on the shores of South America. Led by Francisco Pizarro, they were a tiny, isolated band of Spanish conquistadors. By all accounts of military logic, the terrain alone should have destroyed them. They were dragging heavy steel, gunpowder, and massive, terrifying beasts called horses. Moving an army through the virgin jungle or over unmapped 15,000-foot peaks would have taken years. But the Spanish didn't have to bushwhack. They found a superhighway waiting for them. The irony of the Capacnan is one of history's greatest tragedies. The very system designed to rapidly unify and protect the empire became the exact mechanism that allowed a foreign invader to conquer it at lightning speed. Pizarro used the Inca's own infrastructure against them, driving straight to the heart of the empire. He didn't even need to carry supply lines. The Spanish simply raided the state-run storehouses. The brilliant system of freeze-dried potatoes and stored grain meant the invaders were perfectly fed. They slept in the temples meant for the Chasqui runners, resting comfortably before their next slaughter. But let's pause and compare this to the Romans. Why did the Roman roads survive while the Incan roads vanished? In Europe, Roman roads dictated where modern cities were built. They are still driven on today. The Romans built for the wheel. Straight lines, low grades. When cars were invented, the footprint was already perfect. But the Incan road was a bespoke masterpiece, engineered exclusively for feet and hooves. When the Spanish took over, they tried to bring wheeled carts into the Andes. It was a disaster. You cannot drag cannons and heavy wagons up thousands of vertical stone steps. Because the Incan roads couldn't accommodate European wheeled transport, they were slowly abandoned. But before they were abandoned, they were used as weapons of resistance. They burned the suspension bridges to trap the Spanish. They deliberately triggered landslide, washing thousands of miles of their own magnificent road off the cliffs to halt the European horse. Imagine being the civilization that built the impossible, only to have to tear it down to survive. Without the massive state-sponsored labor force to clear the drains and pull the weed under, the drains clogged. The retaining walls burst under the monsoon rains. The desert sands blew over the coastal highways, erasing them from the map. The tampus crumbled. The kolkas rotted. The great relay race stopped. The physical hard drive of the empire was disconnected forever. But the Earth doesn't forget a footprint that massive. Today, fragments of the 25,000-mile network still survive. In remote villages, the original roads are still the only way to get to market. And in exactly one gorge in Peru, the local communities still rebuild the grass suspension bundled every single year using the exact same methods passed down for 6 centuries. But what does the Incan road mean for us today? Today, modern engineers with millions of dollars of heavy machinery still struggle to keep roads open in the Andes during the rainy season. Modern asphalt crumbles, but right next to it, the Kapak Nan holds firm. The secret isn't magic, it's physics and humility. The Inca understood that you cannot stop the mountain, you have to let it breathe. Now, 21st century civil engineers are actually studying these 500-year-old ruins to learn how to build sustainable infrastructure in extreme environments. A civilization with no wheel, no iron, and no written language out-engineered the modern world. Using only muscle, stone, grass, and freeze-dried potatoes, they didn't build a road across their world. They wove their world together. They are the ultimate testament to human willpower.
But the Inca weren't the only ones defying the impossible.
Halfway across the world, another empire was building a megacity entirely on water.
Next time on World Before Today, we dive into the floating capital of the Aztecs. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell.